I am.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. We're going to let everybody slowly filter in. Welcome to our first panel presentation of the spring. This is So You Think You Want To, part of our career series. This is an ongoing career series panel presentation that covers multiple pathways and industries that our Futurology program has put on previously and is revamping this year to bring you guys some new awesome people to hear about their jobs, their career journeys, where they started, and how they got there. My name is Kristen Jones. I am one of the Futurology counselors with CUSD, and I'm also here with my fellow counselor, Jen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Tonight, we're going to be talking through a little bit about what we do, and then we're going to hand it off to our panelists for a moderated conversation about their work in e-commerce. We are credentialed college and career counselors. We're a part of the Futurology program within CUSD. Of course, we're here for you for our individual one-on-one appointments, for our first Gen Fridays and targeted outreach, and also for wonderful events like this. This is a webinar, so you are all on mute and your cameras are turned off. This is being recorded as a part of our presentation and will be uploaded to our webinar locker later this week. Tonight's theme is e-commerce. E-commerce is a short and condensed version of what's known as electronic commerce or internet commerce. It refers to the buying and selling of goods and services using the internet. Although this is a super common feature, I don't think that many students know that it actually has a name or that it originated somewhere that was outside of a brick and mortar store. So e-commerce is often used to refer to the sale of physical products online, but it can also describe any type of commercial transaction that's facilitated through the internet. There are a few different types of e-commerce that are typically used in business. There's the business to consumer model, which is when you buy a pair of shoes online from a particular store or retailer. There's business to business within e-commerce, which is when goods and businesses buy or exchange goods from each other. There is a C2C or consumer to consumer when customers buy goods from each other. That would be a place like Etsy or a place like eBay. And then a direct to consumer where an individual company sells directly to the consumer. So a small owned online boutique or business is what we typically know as a D2C type e-commerce model.
And that's who we're going to be focusing on tonight. Some of our small owned business boutiques online. We're going to go ahead and begin by presenting our panelists tonight. Our first one tonight is Eileen Jimenez. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. She is an Indigenous Otomi and queer artist who attended UCLA for undergrad and Cal State Long Beach for her master's and is currently pursuing her doctorate in education. She also works full-time at a community college in Seattle. Throughout her education and professional career, art has become more than her hobby. Initially, it was a way for her to de-stress, but slowly she's become very good at creating and expanding her art. And she currently has an online Etsy shop and partnership with companies such as Levi's. Her art is powerful, political, and beautiful. So I encourage you to check out her artwork on Instagram and on her website if you can after the workshop. So we'll be hearing a little bit from Eileen. Eileen, if you want to say hi to everyone, you're more than welcome to.
Hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be here with you all tonight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Next up, we will also have Anna Caleb. She's another one of our guest speakers tonight. She attended UCLA and studied psychology for her bachelor's degree. She's currently the owner of 81 Standard Online Boutique. And this is what she calls her passion project, AKA a side gig. As a child growing up, she shared a passion for fashion with her mom. And so she always dreamed of being in the industry herself as a grown-up. And in the past, she has worked at Charlotte Rue's headquarters in San Francisco. She's done styling for Michael Kors, has done some social media marketing for a fashion app. And her current job right now is actually outside of the industry. It's at Google, so still pretty cool. But she does enjoy running her online boutique still. And hopefully one day she aspires to be able to make that, the sole source of her income. So feel free to check out her online shop as well. She does have Instagram, so you can find her on there also. you want to say hi, Anna, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and hopefully I can do my best to answer any questions.
Thank you for joining us. And then last but certainly not least, we have Rayanne. She is a curve fashion model and blogger and body activist. She co-founded the Confident Collective with the goal to empower women and provide them with tools to live a more confident life through fitness, events, workshops, and retreats. And she even has a podcast. The Confident Collective is a community and resource for women to be more confident in all aspects of life, with powerhouse brand partnerships with companies such as Nike, H&M, Aerie. Both Rayanne and her partner Christina have made their mark as pretty much established marketing mavens. So we definitely want to go ahead and take some time to welcome Rayanne as well. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat with you. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, thank you. So once again, welcome to all our panelists. Welcome to all our guests online. We're gonna go ahead and dive into answering asking them some questions. And just as a reminder, at the very end, you yourself can ask our panelists questions in the chat towards the end of the presentation tonight.
Everybody. So we're going to do these questions in more of a round robin style. So if you want to continue to answer in the way that Jen introduced you, that's probably the easiest for everyone. The first question, when we put together this panel initially, and Jen touched a little bit as a part of your introductions, is giving students an understanding of where your journey started. So our first question is really, where did you decide to go to college, if you decided to go to college at all? And what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Cool. This question is always really interesting to me just because I feel like my journey is really not traditional in terms of what I studied in school. My major in undergrad was French literature. So I went to UCLA and I got a degree in French and Francophone literature. And I thought I was gonna do something with French, maybe international, maybe go back and earn a degree in math and be a math teacher. I don't know, I felt really lost when I was in college. And then I ended up getting a master's in counseling at Cal State Long Beach. And then I started working for a TRIO program. I'm not sure if you all know what TRIO is, but it's like a college access program. So working with high school students, their families, to try to get them to go to college. And again, that's what I love to do. I still work at a community college right now. Like Jennifer was saying, I am getting my doctoral degree in Indigenous leadership in education. But I think I still love to do the work in education, but also I am excited to be able to do so much of the work with my art as well. So, and find ways that those two kind of mix.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much, Eileen. I think part of this question also leads and helps students identify that maybe where they start is not where they'll finish, or what they initially try to study or think about studying might connect or end up being something totally different that they do as a part of their career journey. So Anna, what about you? Where did you go to school and what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Yeah, so I started at College of San Mateo, which is a local community college where I grew up. And then I did the transfer route to UCLA. And I majored in psychology and I minored in education. And when I took that minor on, I thought I might want to be a high school counselor or college counselor because I kind of enjoyed visiting my counselors and going over my classes and making sure I was on track. So I thought it would be really fun to kind of do that and help other students. And I actually ended up doing like kind of like an internship course at my time at UCLA, and I went and interned like at a high school, and I really enjoyed it. But growing up, I did always love the fashion route. I just didn't know what that meant, and I thought you had to live like in New York to do it. I just didn't know that that was available kind of wherever you live. Especially in today's time, it's all digital. You can really live in Kansas and kind of have your own Etsy shop or do whatever you want. So that's kind of the path I took. I tried to be a little more, I guess you could say, traditional. And I started in admin work and then went on to work at a school temporarily and then switched over to the fashion industry. So I kind of circled back to what I always wanted to do, but I limited myself thinking I couldn't do it where I lived or that I didn't know enough or that I didn't have that Vogue look, that I thought you had to have. So I do like that you touched on, you don't have to major in what you want to do later. I think that's really important that everybody knows that you can kind of study something and then change your mind later on, or revisit something you loved when you were younger. And so that was kind of my journey there.
Awesome. And what about you, Rayanne?
So I went to Drake University, which is in Des Moines, Iowa, and studied magazine journalism and graphic design. And I went there because Meredith Corporation is actually headquartered there, which they have like Better Homes and Gardens magazine and a lot of other titles. So I went there because my dream was to be an art director for a fashion magazine. And I got to intern at Better Homes and Gardens while I was in college. And that was in my brain what I wanted to do and what I wanted to study. So
awesome. We're going to touch on your internships and all of those experiences in just a few questions. So I'll hand it off to Jen.
Okay, great. Thank you all for sharing. Now we'd like to know a little bit more about you. Could you all share who were some of your influences early on? Could you remember someone or something that influenced you to pursue your current path?
Yeah, I think I moved to Seattle. I grew up in Anaheim. And so I grew up in Anaheim in California, and I moved to Seattle about 4 years ago. And I feel like when I moved to Seattle, there's a really cool supportive art community up here, especially for BIPOC people, right? So and I also connected a lot with like these really cool Latinx artists up here. And I feel like it felt easier to connect than in a place like LA, right? Like where there's so many people doing art and it's such a big, vast community. Here, I feel like because it felt more tight knit, and I found a lot of support in that community. Like there were a lot of pop-ups where I started to sell some of my work in person, and a lot of the people who I met up here used to send me art opportunities over Instagram. So I connected with a lot of people on like social media. And I think that that's the validation I think that I really needed, is like, I knew that I like to do art for fun, but like I could never imagine that I would be able to make money out of doing art. Like, but it's really cool to, have connected to people who I met, like I said, on social media, and then they had connection. So like I met this person at a pop-up who works for Portland State University, and then he hired me to do like a poster for this conference that he had. And then from that conference, I met other people, and same thing, like that's how I got connected with the Levi's shirt campaign and stuff like that. It was people who I met at pop-ups or people who I met at some of these like smaller communities.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to answer this question and share some of their experience as well?
Sure. I think so. To kind of like give a quick little background on how I got to the Confident Collective, so this makes sense. After I graduated college, I moved back home and wanted to become a fashion blogger because I was so influenced by. I worked with a lot of bloggers at my time at Better Homes and Gardens magazine. So that was a huge influence on what I wanted to do. And I started a blog while I was in college. And then after I graduated, I really took it like full on and started posting and was really trying to make a career out of it. And then kind of my experience working as a curve model and fashion blogger in LA, I just felt like there was definitely this need for connection in real life. Obviously, this was before Corona times. And Christina and I, my business partner, got a coffee one day, and we were like, we feel like there's this need to connect with women in a deeper way, because we would get so many messages from people asking like for advice on how to get over their body insecurities or how to learn to love themselves more. So we were like, there's just this need. And so it was kind of all of those things that got me onto this path of launching the Confident Collective.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Anna, did you want to talk about this question?
Sure. I don't have something as interesting to kind of share about that. I think I went to community college just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I mean, other than the fact that I just like fashion and my mom always dressed so beautifully. So I would say she was kind of an earlier influence. But as far as my current path, I've kind of just gone with the flow a little bit, like seeing what I like, what I don't like. I'm constantly learning, growing, and then, after putting in work with the current job, like moving on to kind of something that I could grow in and to like my next step. But I've always kind of let life guide me, if that makes sense. So I didn't have this 10-year plan that I've rigidly been following. I kind of just went with the flow, and that's how I've gotten some of the best opportunities. I mean, I got to style for Michael Kors, and that kind of in the weirdest way fell in my lap. So like I'm still ambitious and I still pursue opportunities, and I try not to say no unless it's something I really just don't want to do. But I'm also just open. I'm trying not to be rigid. I'm trying to see what happens. And so by networking and talking to people, so that's kind of what's influenced me to be like where I am now. I just kind of started with something I liked and kind of followed that and talked to people and gotten to where I am now. And hopefully I'll continue to do that. So
Awesome. Good words of wisdom. Thank you. Kristen, you want to take it away with our next question?
Sure. So one thing that we really want students to understand is that there is a lot of gray space in between where you start and your mid part of your career and where you finish. So I was hoping that all of you could share what some of your first early jobs or internships were like, whether they were related to your current, passion projects or not, and what valuable skills you were learning on through those experiences. And I'll even give myself as an example to start. So I worked at a sunglass shop, which was my first job when I was 16 years old. And one of the really valuable skills that I learned was about customer service, about, how to interact with people and how to make a transaction happen, kind of in sales, but mostly just about how to speak with people. And that was really, really valuable to me, even in my job now as a moderator like this or as a counselor. So Eileen, if you can start, I'll just let you guys take it away and talk about your early experiences and what skills were really impactful for you.
Yeah, I think as a first generation low income college student, I had a lot of anxiety about like jobs and what I'm destined to do. I don't even know what it's called, right? So I felt like I actually stumbled a lot in my first jobs, like through student jobs and through these like art opportunities. Like I feel like I've definitely learned trial by error, right? So thinking about um, finding and being okay with asking for help is probably what I learned the most. Is like I said, like I'm the first in my family to go to college, and like my parents and like didn't speak English and didn't really know what just how things worked, right? Well, both in college and also like the professional field. So I feel like um, definitely what I learned in my first kind of jobs is like networking was really important, right? So putting myself out there, like nobody's going to know if I'm interested if I don't say that I'm interested, right? And in a lot of ways making my own opportunity. So like not waiting around for it to happen and really kind of push myself. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but like no one's going to buy my work on Etsy if I don't start an Etsy, right? Or if I don't like take better pictures. Like even like the phone that I got, I make sure to get a phone that takes better pictures of my art so that it's not like all blurry and stuff like that, so really being intentional about the steps that I was taking.
That's so awesome. Anna, what about you?
My early jobs were definitely not glamorous, and I remember throughout college I always had at least a job and then an internship, and then even early days after college I was always working two jobs. So I think that kind of taught me, well, one, life skills, like how to save, how to provide for myself, how to work hard and go after what I wanted, but also you like my job at Charlotte Russe was not glamorous. Sometimes I was knee deep sorting samples for like the directors for like a meeting that they were going to have. So learning like you have to start somewhere, you're not better than anybody, and you just kind of have to work your way up and roll your sleeves up and do the work. Also just like advocating for myself and going after what it was that I wanted, or putting my intentions out there and networking. And that's kind of how I would go on to like the next job, is like, putting out what I wanted to do next. And then somehow someone knew of a job, or I found a connection and I was able to get into that job after, to kind of keep building and growing my skill set. So I think the networking, like not being afraid of hard work, knowing you have to kind of start somewhere, and definitely time management. I would say that's a huge one, like learning. That's how now I can be an entrepreneur and have a full-time job, like learning to manage my time, my calendar, everything, by having, juggling multiple jobs, or jobs that were really demanding.
Awesome. Lots of really great advice about self-advocacy and about putting yourself out there in a network. So all of you that are joining us tonight are already a part of that networking process. You're learning about people in a field that you're interested in, which is so great. So Rayanne, we'll finish with you. What were your first or early internships like, and what valuable skills were you learning?
I mean, some of my very first job, I was 14 and I worked at Chick-fil-A, which I don't even know how that was legal at the time as a 14-year-old, but I was like, I want a job, I want to make money. I'm like going for it. And then, I mean, I had all sorts of odd jobs, like doing in college. I literally washed the men's basketball uniforms after games. It was disgusting, but you got to do what you got to do. Similar to what Anna said, you got to just work hard, and no job is like below you, and you just got to do what you got to do. And then in college, my first internship was at Better Homes and Gardens magazine on the social media team, because I was very interested in social media, and that taught me so much about social media. Better Homes and Gardens had an incredible social media approach, especially with Pinterest and working with bloggers. So I learned so much there. I also interned for the art director there. So I learned all about styling photo shoots, prepping for shoots, how everything that goes into that, which was so fascinating to me. And I really fell in love with that. I also interned at Nordstrom on the retail side. So I learned about customer experience, how to talk to people, and also working in retail is just like a lot of work. So it taught me some resilience there, and definitely the people skills. But yeah, I think it's just important to remember that, yeah, every job will teach you something. And it's always like, if it's not your dream job, it's a stepping stone, and you're going to learn something, how to get there. And even up until when I first moved to California, I was working as a curve model and fashion blogger, but I was still working at a cycling studio and nannying part-time, so I could provide for myself and pay rent in order to do what I loved, and then been able to do that full-time now for the last 2 years. But yeah, you gotta hustle with those jobs, but you always learn something.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being so candid and sharing, maybe the parts of the journey that are not as glamorous. So I'll hand it off to Jen for our next question.
Thank you. All right. So what would you all say was the first big pivot in your career trajectory? Did you leave a job you didn't like, or get a position you really wanted? Who would like to speak on this first?
I can go.
Okay.
I think for me, one big pivot was, so I was living in Denver and working at a branding agency while I was blogging and modeling on the side. And honestly, a huge thing that changed my career was deciding to move to LA, which I feel like even the world has changed so much from 3 years ago. I don't think you really need to be here, but for me, I was able to meet so many people here who taught me so much about the industry, that I don't think I would be where I am today, or maybe not even doing this, if I hadn't moved here. And also, I think another pivoting point for me was when I brought on a manager. So that was like the first time where I learned, like, okay, I'm really bad at negotiating. I'm really bad at kind of honestly the back end business side of things. And so I realized where I needed help. And by bringing on a manager, that helped so much to take my career to the next level, when I learned that I can't do everything and need to outsource things that I'm really not great at or just don't want to do.
Nice. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I can go next. I think for sure it was um, when I started just entering at like all kinds of art calls, and that's like I said, that's how I got the amplifier one. It was like a global art call when COVID first started, actually, um, and they were looking for art that kind of exemplified COVID, right? And just where we want to move as a community. And so I think in my bio, you all saw the shirt, the Together We Lift the Sky. Um, and getting selected for that campaign, they picked I think 60 people, and they had, I don't know, like 7,000 entries or something like that. And I of course was fangirling because all the people on the selection committee were like people who I love. And so it was really cool to get selected for that. But you know, from that, I think like I got to deal with Levi's, like I said. Finn River is like a cidery up here, so I also did work for them, and like other colleges and universities and logos and stuff like that. But I think it was really that global art call, I think, is and it's funny because that image that I submitted, I actually hate. Like I don't like it that much. Like I feel like my skills in art have improved a lot since I submitted that image. So I almost didn't submit it. I did it like the deadline was like at midnight, and I think I did it like at 10 p.m. or something. And I was like, I'm just gonna submit it and see what happens. But yeah, for sure.
For me, I was working as a kind of like a career, not counselor, but I was working at a like an LVN program, vocational nursing program, that was local here. And so after the nurses finished their, I think it was like a 6 month program. It was pretty short, but once they finished, I was supposed to help place them in hospitals and help them find jobs. So for me, it was kind of like an introduction into like, do I really want to be a counselor? Is this kind of what I want to pursue? And then I ended up getting the job at Charlotte Russe. So I would say that was like a big pivot to get me like actually in the fashion industry and seeing how the behind the scenes work, how product is chosen, how it's placed in the store, which has helped me now with like running my shop and how I want to do things. So I would say that was like a really big pivot. And I did leave a job I didn't really like. So I wasn't really happy at that school. So that kind of worked out for me in that sense.
Great. Well, I want to commend you all on being brave. It seems like some of your success so far has been owed to you being a risk taker, right? I think a lesson here for our students is that in order to chase your dreams, you have to be brave, right? Slowly but surely, you'll get to your goals. So thank you all for sharing that. That was really powerful. Kristen, you want to take it away?
Sure. So moving into kind of where you're currently at in your work, I'd love for all of you to describe what a typical day looks like for you and what behind the scenes details would you think somebody would want to know about your day-to-day work. And we'll start with Eileen.
Yeah, I think my days are pretty long. I am an administrator, so I manage a program at a community college. So I work from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, um, typically. And then after that, I also have homework and things like that for my doctoral program. So I try to do homework at least once a day, because my big assignments are due every Saturday. Um, and so once I do my homework, then I feel like I can treat myself and do some of my business stuff, right? So it feels like an honor and like I feel like I'm doing something for myself, like self-care when I am able to work with art. So I try to do some kind of art piece or some kind of doodling or poem or something every day. And then the least fun part of it is the Etsy stuff. I I think I have, I don't know, like 50 maybe pending orders right now. And I think it's like that back end stuff, like the packaging is really annoying to me, and like the shipping, and then like the customer service side of it. So like if you know, like a couple weeks ago, there was a big issue with USPS, right? With a lot of the mail stuff getting delayed. So some of the customer service stuff was kind of taxing for me. It's like, you know, when people were like, oh, my package is delayed, I would have to take time and be really, really polite and saying, I'm so sorry, you know, there's a global pandemic. Also, there's a delay in just USPS in general, right? So trying to do some of the customer service stuff. So definitely my days are pretty busy, and they are typically the same though: work, school, art, business.
Awesome. And then I have a follow-up question for you, Eileen. What's the best seller on your Etsy site right now?
The best seller is this holographic, let me show you all, this like holographic sticker of these like two girls hugging.
How cool.
Yeah, so that's lino cut, and so yeah, it's been really popular, which was unexpected for me. And that's kind of how I approach things, is like, I like making things that I like. I love that, and I am hoping that it sells. If it sells, that's amazing, and if it doesn't, then I'm not sure. Usually it does really well. I don't have a backup plan for the inventory that doesn't sell.
Well, it's great to hear that it's going well. And we'll definitely hear more about the content on your Etsy store and some of your art soon too. So Anna, what about you? What does a typical day look like for you? And what behind the scenes details would somebody want to know about the work that you do?
Yeah, so right now we'll work from home. So I get up, kind of have my little morning routine, grab my coffee and get to work on for my full-time job. And so just like Eileen, I'm working like the 8 to 5. Sometimes it could be 6 or 7 if there's a lot of things going on. And then when I'm done, I try to have my unwind time, dinner time kind of routine. And then after dinner, I try to grab my personal laptop. So that's kind of how I separate it. I have like my work laptop and then my personal laptop. And I try to switch to my personal laptop and run my store. So that might be scheduling out social media posts, planning video content, or working on my website, or fulfill, if I have like shipments I have to fulfill that day, I'll take care of that kind of stuff. So I kind of have to switch gears and carve out time for my store. And then Saturday, like I try to use weekends to create content, because I do shoot a lot of the stuff myself and my husband helps me and I have to edit them. So I try to use weekends for content creation, and then the weekdays for kind of like the admin and keep the business running type things. But I don't want that to discourage anyone from wanting to do a full-time job and a side hustle. I just think it's a lot more work than people think, but that doesn't mean it can't be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that we have a lot of variety here. So Rayanne, you moved into the full-time content creation space. So, you know, as a juxtaposition to some of the experience that we just heard, tell us about your typical day and, you know, some of the behind the scenes things that we should know.
Yeah, well, Eileen and Anna, I know exactly. I did that for many, many years too. So switching into full time, honestly, my days are there's like no typical day, but it always involves kind of the back end things, emailing with brands, whether I'm pitching, looking at contracts, talking to my manager, kind of things that are going on. Then there's the content creation side, and that entails Instagram stories, Instagram reels, TikTok, YouTube, and then for the Confident Collective, which is kind of like it feels like kind of like my side hustle. My full-time job is like content creation, and then my side hustle is the Confident Collective. And we launch a podcast episode every Tuesday. So that's recording the episode, editing the episode, doing all the social promotion for it, running our brand's Instagram account, making sure the website is up to date. All of those things go into that. And I think what I would want someone to know about content creation, I think whatever words you want to use, influencer or whatever, it gets a bad rap that it's like easy, but it takes, you basically are, and that's just where my experience working for the magazine has helped. All of those roles that I learned at the magazine is kind of one role as a content creator. So I'm the model, I'm the editor, I'm the writer, I'm the location scout, I'm the stylist, I'm the makeup artist, I'm the hairstylist, all to produce content for different brands. But I mean, I love it, but it's definitely not necessarily an easy job. And it is also one that can be very emotionally, when you're presenting your life to the world, I just think that's also an important thing to keep in mind. You're basically like opening yourself up. And I think that I've seen in the past year or so, like the toll that that can take on your mental health. So I think if you want to go into that, it's just something to keep in mind. And like, because you're putting yourself out there if that's the route that you choose to go. But with all that said, I love the creative aspect and being able to do something different every single day, and also have that control of if I want to take off a Tuesday and like work on the Saturday, I can do that as my own boss, which is pretty cool too.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for highlighting all of that variety and also the really interesting nuances in your work as people who are obviously all very creative, and in the work that you do behind the scenes as well. So I'm going to hand it off to Jen for our next question.
Mhm. Thank you. And some of you have kind of spoken a little bit about this already, but if there's something different that you haven't mentioned or would like to share, feel free to share what you would say is, part of the challenging part of your work, and the flip side, what is something that you would say you enjoy the most about what you do?
I can go first. The most challenging part, I mean, one, juggling the full-time job until the store can hopefully be my full source of income one day. So just that time, like I just feel spread really thin a lot of the times, and I have to take like a mental health break day kind of thing every once in a while because it gets to be a little too much. So that's a challenge, but again, like that's not meant to be discouraging. It's just something to keep in mind. And also kind of what I'm echoing what the other ladies were saying, but you are your customer service person, you've got to do your QuickBooks and your taxes, and you're kind of everything rolled into one, I think, until you're big enough to outsource those kind of things. So for now, trying to troubleshoot my website or create graphic designs. And so I'm kind of trying to be everything when really I went into it wanting to just curate product, for example. Like if that's my passion is curating product and styling, but because I'm trying to run the store myself, I have to do all these other things that I maybe didn't realize I was signing up for, or just kind of want to get through so I can outsource it one day. So that's kind of the most challenging part. But the part you enjoy most is like, at least for my store, being my own boss and kind of having creative reign over what I'm doing. And I think one day the hard work will pay off, which I think is kind of the best feeling, like knowing you're working hard towards something and waiting for it to kind of come to fruition. So I'd say that's the part I enjoy the most.
Thank you for sharing. You are the Jane of all trades, not Jack, Jane of all trades. Would anyone else like to add to this a little bit here?
Sure. I would say, like I touched on a little bit, I mean, and what Anna said too, I mean, when you work for yourself, there's always something that can be done. So I always feel like my to-do list is like never ending, and that can cause me a little bit of anxiety, just to be totally honest. It's like can be overwhelming. Also, the other side that I touched on was people, when you have an online presence, people will tell you will not be very nice sometimes. And I would say most of 95% of it is people being positive and supportive, but there is that percentage that isn't, and it does take a toll on your mental health for sure. And that has been really challenging for me in the last year. And I started therapy, which I know is not an option for everyone, but it should be. And I would say the part I enjoy the most is just being able to be creative and work with some of my favorite brands that I've looked up to for years and years and years. And also able, like, when a woman will DM me and be like, I wore a swimsuit for the first time in 5 years because like you gave me the confidence and showed me that I don't need to stop waiting until I have a different body to live the life that I want. So I think just seeing the impact and like inspiring women to find their confidence is definitely the part that I enjoy the most.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And thank you for sharing how you kind of balance all that out, right? I think we all need reminders to just take some time to breathe and really indulge in some self-care, for sure. Eileen, did you want to add a little bit to this?
Yeah, and I think I feel like some of the challenging parts of it comes with the commission work that I do. Like I like to be able to do commission work, but I struggle with pricing sometimes. So thinking about like, how much do I charge this organization? I really care about this cause. Do I do it for free? Right? So like pricing feels hard for me still. And then also commission work, because I like to do art that speaks to me and says my story and my family story and my community story. But I don't, like, I remember this person wanted me to do, like, early on, wanted me to do a portrait of Lizzo, right? But Lizzo in like a really specific outfit and like holding a flute, but with her right hand, like really, really specific, right? And so thinking about as an artist too, who, you know, I like, obviously I want to be able to earn money and things like that with my art as well, but thinking about like where do I draw the boundary, right? Like portraits of people who I don't actually like or I don't respect, or you know, doing things that feel like it's going against my values, right? So that's something that I've definitely had to learn to balance. But the part that I enjoy the most is also some of that commission work, like some of the orgs that I've been able to connect with. Also, like one of the reasons I do art is because I love to share the stories of my community and our communities, right? And like it's wild to me that I created a portrait of my mom, you know, like this like brown, like indigenous Mexican woman, and like that it's sold for however much it's sold for, and that it's in a gallery and then it was in someone's house. Like that thought of it feels also really cool. Like it feels really cool that I'm able to represent our communities in ways that haven't always been accessible for my community.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think the takeaway here is, some days will be a little difficult, right? Everyone has their bad days, but ultimately I think you enjoy what you all do. And I think that's what's the most important. I think that's what's important here. So thank you for sharing. And that's awesome, Eileen, about your mom. I need to check that picture out. Now we'll go ahead and hear from Kristen with our next question. We're a little bit over halfway through, okay?
Sure. So we can keep this question brief. It's one of the, more difficult kind of follow-up questions to what you all were just talking about. But I think it's important for our students to understand that mistakes happen with every person in every career trajectory. Often with Instagram and filters, we only see the highlight reel of what people's journeys look like. So even though we often don't talk about mistakes, can you tell us about a mistake you've made along the way, or a situation where you maybe thought you could have done or handled something differently, and what you learned from that situation?
Yeah, I think this is like kind of a very specific one that's just been on my mind recently, but kind of looking back when I first started my career as a curve model and in plus size model, and in the as that kind of translated into my business as a content creator, I think kind of contributing to like this toxic positivity on social media. Looking back, I think that I was like, you have to love your body and love everything about this and and I think I definitely contributed to that. And as I've gotten older and grown and learned, I've seen that if I could go back and do it differently, I would. But then again, I had to go through it to learn what I know now too. So I think that's one thing that kind of sticks out to me, and I'm sure there are many other mistakes as well that I can't think of right now, but mistakes are part of the process and part of the journey.
Sure, absolutely. Eileen or Anna, do you have any mistakes that you'd like to, share and willingly highlight? I know that this is a tough question, to own up to, but I do think it's an important part of the conversation for our students to hear, especially about the rebound.
I'd say for me, this is gonna sound like that cliche answer where someone's like, "What's your greatest weakness?" and then you say like a strength. But for me, it was kind of not believing in myself and starting sooner. I had had the itch to do what I'm doing since 2014, and I shouldn't dwell, but sometimes I'm like, had I started then, I would have already like learned and grown and kind of have come a long way, and today might be very successful. And instead I decided to start, like, a year or two ago. I had to take a pause briefly for some family stuff, so kind of inconsistently over 2 years working on my store. But I think that fear of like, oh, I'm not ready and I need to research it more and analyze it and have a strategy before I launch, it's like, no, sometimes you can just start, and done is better than perfect, and then you learn as you go. So don't be afraid, and just kind of like getting into it, learning as you go. And then that's the best way to learn, is that hands-on experience. And then that's how you kind of grow that like client base or following or whatever it is you're looking for your future goals. But yeah, I'd say not starting sooner. I feel like I wasted a lot of time having what do they call it? Analysis paralysis, where you're over analyzing it so much that you just don't start. And I'd say that was my biggest mistake that I still kind of dwell on sometimes.
Well, it's awesome to hear that you finally took the leap. I think that that's really true of a lot of students, or that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know if I can really do it, or if I really have the skills to succeed. But part of that is taking the risk to try. So, Eileen, do you want to close us out with this question?
Yeah, I think I know growing up I was taught like you have to take every opportunity that comes your way. And I kind of spoke about this a little bit in the question before, right? But the just the fact that I don't think I knew that I could say no, right? So like some of the orgs and stuff that I worked with, or like some of the things, the commission pieces that I was asked to do, like I don't always believe in them, and feeling like, well, I can't say no, it's an opportunity, right? Um, but I do think like I wish I would have been firmer on that. Like I actually don't believe in your org, and it hasn't been something that's like terrible, and um, like I'm more than happy to share that afterwards. Like what are the things that I struggled with now, but that I accepted. But I do think like I actually don't really like that person, so I'm not gonna do a portrait of that particular person for you, or um, I don't like your conference theme, so I'm not going to do the thing for you. Sorry. Right.
Sure. I think that that's a great point to transition into some of our next questions, and that there is a lot of pressure for students to take advantage of every single opportunity that comes their way. Some of that like unconditional positivity, Rayanne, that you touched on. And sometimes more of a balanced approach is really what's true and authentic to us as human people, and makes more sense in the long run of a full career trajectory. So Jen, I'll pass it off to you for some of our final questions.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for sharing your moments of growth, being truly genuine with us. We appreciate it. And so we do have students listening, and hopefully they're learning a lot from you all. For those that are listening, what would you say is a skill that they can invest in or learn now, if they do potentially want to work in a field like yours, have an online shop, have a presence online like you do?
I would say learning digital marketing. And I know that it's always changing literally from month to month. So that's kind of a big task. But I'd say just practicing or curating a feed, something you're passionate about. Doesn't have to be fashion or art or anything, like just kind of curating a feed, learning how to put things together, how to make them visually appealing, and being authentic online, and just kind of learning that skill set. And I think the beauty of starting that even now, if that's what you really wanted, if you want to do something related to that long term, the beauty of that is like you kind of would have a portfolio to show later down the road if you wanted to apply for a job, or if you are starting your own business, you'd have the confidence because you've been working on it for a while. But I've seen a lot of like social media marketing roles where they want to see what your Instagram feed looks like and things like that. So I think like learning to curate a feed and learning about digital marketing and ads and that kind of stuff would be really valuable for like a shop or anything related to that.
For sure. And everyone's so tech savvy now with all the apps. So I think that's definitely good advice. I know like 10 years ago, there was no social media position in companies, but now they're like everywhere. So I think definitely that's definitely good advice. Rayanne, would you like to share anything here?
Sure. I'm like trying, I was like thinking, I mean, Anna, you had a great answer. I mean, I would say for like me, mine specifically, I would say, I mean, like photo and video, also audio. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, the photo, video, audio. I mean, just like learn about creating content and trying to find your voice and figure out what you're really passionate about, because I think that, yes, I think that this industry is saturated, but I think you can stand out by knowing what value you can bring to people, because honestly, everyone has an iPhone, everyone can take a pretty photo or edit a cool TikTok, but you really have to be providing value to someone. So I think just kind of thinking about what you want to bring and like what value would make you different. And then also learning just about content creation, whether it's audio with podcasts, or photo or video for like YouTube and TikTok.
Got it. Thank you. So some self-exploration, right? For students that haven't done so already, definitely a good idea to start, right? We say this all the time with career exploration, how important it is, but you're hearing it from Rayanne, a very successful businesswoman, how important it is to really, really do it for yourself, right? Not just to make your counselor happy. Eileen, would you like to add to this before we move on to our last question?
Yeah, I think for sure, echoing what everyone else said already, but also thinking about that voice piece. I think that Rayanne was talking about is thinking about, like, if you're an artist, create a artist bio, an artist statement, right? Find out how to do that. I'm happy. You can reach out to me, and I'm happy to direct you on how to do that, because I know when I first started up applying for art calls and like some of these big proposals, right, to do murals and things like that, like I had to Google like artist statement, and none of them felt like me, right? So thinking about how to really create something that feels like you. And also, like, I remember the first art calls, the pictures I took of my art were terrible. I'm like, of course I didn't get them, right? Because I didn't know how to take pictures. I didn't know how to scan my artwork, so that I produce high quality images, right? So some of those like technical things that you know are harder to learn, but there is definitely a way that you can access those resources, for sure.
Gotcha. Thank you. So trial and error, right? I think it's important for students to just really start learning these skills and practicing and honing them, so that when they become professionals like you all, they will, be happy with their work and present their best foot forward. Thank you all for sharing. I'll go ahead and direct it to Kristen for our last question of the night.
Yeah, before we get into open Q&A and also open time for you all to plug away your businesses and the work that you do additionally for our students to see, we want to end it on a positive note. So, what is the best piece of professional advice you've ever received? It can be specific to your industry, it can be completely general, but, as you've grown along the way, what's the best piece of advice that someone's given you?
I can go. I think no one is going to care more about your career than you. So you can't wait for opportunities to come to you or things to happen. Like no one will care about it more than you. So it is on you to build that business and create a life that you want to live, and really just like go for it and not wait for things. I think sometimes we let things, we're like, oh, wait for things to come our way or opportunities. And I think the main thing I can say is no one will care about your career as much as you. So pitch yourself, reach out, make connections. Just really don't be scared to put yourself out there.
Awesome. Anna or Eileen, either one of you. I'd love to hear what the best piece of advice you've received so far has been.
I'd say for me, it's actually something my sister said to me. If you're not enjoying the journey, you're probably doing it wrong, or you're not on the right path. So if you're dead set on being a doctor, but you're just like miserable in medical school or learning something related to medicine, maybe it's not actually what you thought you wanted to do. So I think the same goes for like my store for me, for example. If I know that there's the part I mentioned, there's the parts I don't enjoy doing, like the QuickBooks, the customer service, whatever it is. But ultimately the overarching thing that I'm doing, I do love doing it. So if I'm not enjoying that, then maybe the store isn't, wouldn't have been for me. So you kind of have to enjoy your journey. There's going to be good days and bad days, but overall it needs to feel worth it to you. Otherwise you're probably on the wrong path. So don't be stubborn on what you thought you wanted to do. It's okay to like something in theory and then get into it and realize, oh, that's not for me. Let me switch gears. And there's nothing wrong with that. So you got to kind of enjoy your journey. Otherwise, it's probably not the right journey for you.
It's so important. We've talked about a lot of different pivots tonight, but definitely that, as you grow and learn more about yourself, your wants and needs can change. And that can be absolutely relevant to, your preferences for a turkey sandwich or a preference for the actual job that you do every day. So Eileen, what about you?
I think that I can get my cups filled in different ways, right? So like I said, like I actually am not, I don't know that I'm interested in doing art full time. I'm okay with doing my work in the community and my artwork and just being balanced in lots of ways because they all fill me in different ways. I think for a long time I felt really unhappy because I thought the job that I have, it has to like make me feel complete, right? And knowing that I feel complete in the ways I can do art, in the ways I do my work in the community, so community service, and in the ways that I am a scholar and the work that I do at the college.
That's so awesome and so relevant too. I think especially within Western culture, we put a lot of focus on your job being a part of your full identity. And I think what you guys have all been able to establish and kind of describe this evening is that it is important to have that balance and to have other things that you include in your life that make you happy. In a lot of cases here, it's also been able to make some additional money or put you into an industry that you really enjoyed. So I love that. I think that that's so important. Our last slide is just about open Q&A. So if any of our attendees want to ask any questions specific to a particular person on our panel or to all panelists, you're all more than welcome to use the open Q&A feature. We'll leave that open and see and answer questions as they come in. But as those are coming in, do you all want to plug your social media, your art, and the things that you're creating currently?
Sure. You can find me basically across social media at Rayanne Langus and at Confident Collective. Those two are my main things across basically the whole board, or at theconfidentcollective.com.
And you can find me on Instagram at 81standard, spelled out, or www.81standard.com. And you can check out some of the clothes that I'm selling.
Yeah, and my Instagram is an art page, but I also do a lot of process videos. So if you're interested in learning some of the kind of art form that I do, is called printmaking. I do a lot of that. I also post a lot of pictures of my cat and my dissatisfaction with so much rain in Seattle. So lots of Seattle pictures and lots of talk about my artwork. And I also use, I share a lot of community events and things like that on there. So go ahead and follow me if you want.
Wonderful. And I did want to add that the images are linked too. So when you all get the deck after this presentation tonight in a follow-up email, you can click on them to explore their content further.
We have one question that came in. I'm assuming it is for all of you since you all have a digital presence, but what equipment do you use to film your content or take product pictures, especially for lighting that you really like?
For like my website imagery, I do have a DSLR, but honestly, like I've listened to so many podcasts and tried to learn and improve like my site for myself, and a lot of them said they started with their iPhone. So don't feel you have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, on equipment or something. You could start with your iPhone. There's a lot of stuff on Amazon now, like an iPhone tripod, or if you do want to start with a beginner, like DSLR. And lens. So that's kind of what I did. And I have a tripod for that as well. And then I just got basic studio lighting also on Amazon. So again, like you don't need to spend thousands of dollars. You can kind of, maybe spend $50 and get a couple essentials and then use like your phone or something just to kind of get started.
It's really cool. Eileen, Rayanne, you guys want to chime in about the equipment that you really enjoy?
Yeah, so I basically shoot everything on my iPhone with a tripod and a Bluetooth remote. And then I have my ring light, which I have on now. And that is like basically, I do have a vlogging camera that I use to do YouTube content. But again, you can start with your iPhone. You can basically do everything from the iPhone.
Sure. And Rayanne, as a follow-up, since you do create on YouTube, are there any editing softwares or things that you really enjoy using as a part of video content creation?
So this is like very new to me, and like again just shows like, so I just use iMovie. There are so many other ones you can use, and I honestly Google, like as I'm editing, I'm like, how to make the video shake or something. Like I literally am completely new to this and I'm trying to teach myself. So yeah, I just use iMovie, which is, I mean, pretty easy to learn, and you can Google it. If I can do it, you can do it. If I'm editing something for TikTok or Instagram Reels, Splice is the app that I use, which is super easy to use. And that's my favorite one.
Awesome.
Yeah, I use iPhone also. In the chat, I'll type in, there's Photopea is how I started to use its free Photoshop before I got the Photoshop suite because it's kind of expensive. And then there's a website called canva.com. Those are how I started kind of editing my images and making them digital and stuff. And then I got this teeny little scanner. I have it here on my desk because I was using it last night, but it scans like up to like 900 super high res for artwork, and it was super affordable also.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Those were great tips. One more question that came in is, how do you handle negative reviews or comments?
I think mine is more, obviously it's not reviews of a product, it's like reviews of like comments about me personally. So I think that, I mean, I heard like Gary Vee say this many times, and I when someone has something negative to say about you or just is tearing you down for no reason, it says more about them than it does about you. Unhappy people hurt people. So as I just feel like you kind of have to try and detach a little bit. Also, speaking to a therapist and going to therapy to work through a lot of that feedback, because I mean, we're honestly not supposed to take in this much feedback all the time as humans. So that has really helped me. BetterHelp is a affordable therapy option, which I highly recommend as well. It's much more affordable than conventional therapy. So those two things have kind of helped with the negative comments that I received from someone who I don't have a physical product yet, but that's how that has helped me.
That's great. Eileen or Anna, would you guys like to chime in about negative reviews or comments that you've received?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like thinking about like, like when you have that conversation with someone, like I love pineapple on my pizza, which I know is controversial, but like, right, thinking about it that way, like not everyone is going to like pineapple on their pizza, and I'm really happy with the artwork that I produce. It means a lot to me, and at the end of the day, I'm okay if they don't like it. But I think what Rayanne was saying is true. Sometimes it impacts you, right? Because we're not supposed to take all this kind of feedback, and therapy is something that for sure has helped me also. process some of that, or just talking to a friend and being like, this is what this made me feel, right?
Absolutely.
For me, I'm still a little bit smaller, so I haven't really dealt with too much negativity. I'm sure eventually that will come. And I do pour my heart and soul into what I pick out. So I know I'll probably take it a little personal when I shouldn't. So I think for me, the goal would be to make sure I'm not taking it personal and remembering what the other lady said, which is like, hurt people. And so it's not personal, and just kind of trying to remember that it's not geared towards me as a person. Um, so yeah, I just haven't really had to deal with that yet, but that's hopefully how I would try to deal with it later down the road.
Sure. This is the last call for questions. I want to make sure that we honor everyone's time and that we wrap up appropriately. So for any of our other attendees, if you have any last lingering questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, but otherwise we will be wrapping up. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your clearly really busy entrepreneurial schedule to chat with us about this e-commerce, content creation, fashion merchandising, and artistic creative space. There's so much within there for our students to learn and digest about. And it's been a wonderful hour talking to you all and learning more about where you started and where you are now.
For sure. Echo what Kristen said, ditto to it all. Thank you all for spending your night with us. We truly appreciate you all taking some time to share some of your valuable insight.
Of course, thank you for having us.
Thank you. And if anyone has specific questions, then they can always feel free to reach out to me on Instagram.
Again, thank you guys so much. We are going to close out because I don't see any additional questions, but have a wonderful evening. And thank you for joining us again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.